That's right, dude. Wouldn't you cheat?
Space. The final Justin. Space. The final frontier. These are the podcasts of the Starfleet Night Shift. Our continuing mission to discuss strange new worlds. TM. To review Star Trek in all its iterations. To boldly go and talk about Trek we've all seen before. Before. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Night Shift podcast. Happy Saturday, everybody. It's one of my favorite days of the week. Sorry to make you guys wait, but we're back. Floor 47 Mezzanine, Earth Space Dock, to do the next episode of the podcast. You guys excited?
Oh,
Super excited.
Yeah.
Of course.
Padcast always, like, I know what you're referencing, but it makes you feel like you're just pronouncing podcast like a
Like
great
Boston. I'm from
Midwestern.
Boston. It's the podcast.
Oh, yeah,
Park
Boston
the
works
car and
too.
have it yet and do the podcast. I apologize for that.
Oh, God.
Anyway, welcome to the stream, guys. It is I, Captain Merrick, in the upper right-hand corner. Of course, my beautiful wife, Chief Jennifer, upper left in the gold. Bottom left, Commander Justin himself. And, of course, Science Officer Azure in the bottom right, looking all sparkly as he does. My hope is, guys, that very soon we will actually come outfitted in matching sweaters. That's probably the nerdiest statement I've ever said in my life. I hope we all show up to this thing in our matching sweaters. But no, we've looked into some. There's some pretty cool lower decks sweaters matching the awesome uniforms that you see here on my very handsome character. I'll link them in the Discord. They're pretty good for Christmas, right?
Well,
Did
so
did
the
we
problem
rock it?
is I kind of want the sweatshirt.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I
that's
can
fair.
get the sweater too, I guess.
No. They're actually a little bit more expensive than I want them to be, but so I wouldn't want anyone to have to buy them both. But yeah, the sweatshirt does the same thing. It does the same thing. You know, if you're willing to wear it outside, you know.
Oh, I for sure would be.
Because I would be too. I know. I'm always trying to get the attention of people at Starbucks. Okay, so the one thing you could absolutely know for sure is that Jennifer and I get up every day and at some point in the day walk to Starbucks. The Starbucks guys know us. Even if we don't buy anything, it's just like a part of our daily walk and it's right around the corner. I'm always wearing some sort of Star Trek something. Hat, t-shirt, freaking badge. I don't wear an actual badge to Starbucks. But
Are you sure you don't?
Okay,
I feel like it
maybe
might have happened.
Have I? Have I done that?
I think so, yeah.
If Judy says that I have, then I probably have. But I always hope someone goes, "Hey, I know Star Trek," and I'm gonna be like, "Take my I don't have a business card, but I'd be like, "Check out our podcast." It's never gonna happen, but it's my hope someday. All right, so last week, and I just want to shout out again. If you guys didn't know, Louise Fletcher, who played Kai Wynn or Wynn Adami in DS9, passed away last week. We tried to do an homage to her, basically discussing Star Trek villains and everything that they bring to a series, how a really good villain can be a really good boon to a show. Sometimes that's the biggest difference. I'd argue that in DS9 it made the biggest difference ever. So if you guys haven't checked that out, or if you didn't know, I'm sorry to pass along the bad news, but please check out our previous podcast. Lots of great stuff there. Today we have a new topic that Science Officer Azure held off on last week so that we could do the Louise Fletcher thing. That definitely came out of nowhere. So walk with the prophets, Adami, and I'll pass it over to Science Officer Azure.
Yeah, it's funny. So I had this idea for a question that I wanted to ask my fellow padcasters. It's uncomfortable. But I asked everyone ahead of time, and really only Merrick responded. I asked if people wanted to know the question ahead of time or not, and Merrick said he preferred it to be sort of spontaneous and live. So no one here knows the question I'm about to ask, and I apologize if any of you don't have a great answer off the top of your head, because I refuse to go first. I will answer this question last after.
So curious.
Spicy. I like it.
So I just want to know, and especially if you don't have a particular reason, that's totally fine. You can just give your answer and we'll move on, although that'll be a very short topic.
Maple says I look like I watch Star Trek. Sorry, I just need to say.
I saw that.
Yeah. Do I really? Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, yeah, with the outfit, it's hard to tell.
Badge. Pips.
Man, that's the one you get to wear to Starbucks, though.
I assume Merrick at least takes the pips with him to Starbucks. I forgot. Oh, my question. Yes. So I have a particular favorite sort of innovation or technology in Star Trek. And again, I won't answer first, so you'll find out what mine is at the end. And I was wondering if you guys had like anything. It could be something super broad, or something from like a specific episode, or something that just exists in the Star Trek universe that is like your favorite sort of technology, innovation, something that we don't have in like our world today that exists in the Star Trek universe. And like I said, if you have a particular reason why you like your choice so much, that'd be kind of cool to hear.
So, the favorite technological advancement that Star Trek has that we don't in real life.
Basically.
The thing that we wish we had the most.
Yeah, and it could be some like generic technology. It could be a specific invention, whatever you want.
I got it, guys. I got it.
Oh, that's tough. Yeah. Okay. I'm
The
gonna let
worried
Justin go.
No,
I'm genuinely worried that Justin is going to pick mine, but that's
no.
The risk you run when you go last.
Yeah,
that's
I
true.
mean, it's such a good. That's a really really good question, because if we think about technology today, and the evolution as to what it was from the TOS days all the way to what it is now, and you start to correlate them and say, okay, wow, there's so many things that we have that people back when they created TOS were probably like, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do.
It was
this
science
stuff or have this
fiction, bro. Yes.
I know, and that's kind of what motivated this question.
And that's a brilliant question. I feel. I think for me, personally, I really like the tricorders, because the tricorders are sort of what allows you to determine so many things that we might not be able to know or distinguish what they are, and that could come down to literally anything. Like you see it so frequently used in Star Trek, where it's like when they're trying to figure out something, they use a tricorder to scan certain things. If they're trying to diagnose something, they use a tricorder to evaluate those things. And I feel like when it's so much more the advanced smartphone, if you think about it in that sense. Because you know what, even for me, like I will take my phone and I will like pretend, yeah, sure, you know what, I'm 31. I'll scan my dad. Damn, you're scanned up as being mean today. Like it's just you're just being mean. You're rude. My tricorder is never wrong.
You are clearly angry.
Yeah, you're clearly angry. You clearly need food. I think you need coffee. My tricorder is never wrong. So I think for me, tricorders are definitely the one thing that I favor out of Star Trek, because it sort of gives you that room and gap of thinking. We could be at a stage in our lives one day where they are able to determine certain things or illnesses and so forth like that too, just by scanning and doing those things. So tricorders for me are a little bit more of that like, okay, I think that's where my favorite piece of technology really is, just because it can be so useful and convenient eventually, right?
I want to follow up on that, because specifically, like, that brings immediately to mind, like, that branches into a couple of interesting topics and a couple of different things that I think is summed up perfectly by a scene that pops into my head immediately at the beginning of Star Trek Voyager. I'm sure Azure is immediately on board.
Medical tricorder.
Yeah, they're like, he goes, tricorder, and he hands him a tricorder. He goes, medical tricorder.
It was the very first thing that came to mind when
episode,
you
right?
said tricorder.
Right?
Yes. So that's, and that really branches off into exactly what you were talking about, right? Like, we think tricorder, away mission, you're scanning for whatever, I detect no life signs or whatever. But so much, I think, of what you were talking about is sort of what I'm going to probably be stealing from Jennifer here in a second. So I was just going to say that it probably forks off in not just the tricorders, but in the technology in general that leads to one of probably the most important scientific advancements that have happened in Star Trek that we all wish that we had, which is medical advancements. Was that going to be yours, Jennifer? Because
actually, no. I felt like that was too
too broad.
Yeah.
Medical biobed. No, but seriously, like the medical advancements in Star Trek are always one of the greatest things. And sometimes if you go back to like TOS, and you're looking at like them doing, like Kirk upside down doing the leg things, so he's pushing the leg boxes or whatever. There's so many weird, and all the jars of variously bright colored liquids that Bones has in sickbay. Even in the 2260s, it hadn't really gotten as far as it did in what we consider sort of classic Star Trek. Like most anything, like I love how they meme about like the common cold or getting a headache being a serious thing. Right? It's like, what? You had a headache and you didn't tell me? And it's like, well, that's common. It's like, well, that was before we hadn't mapped the entire brain. And now it's not a big deal. I think everyone wants to say things like, warp drive or replicators, but medical advancements probably, like if I had to be realistic and not jump to one of those things immediately, the big flashy things. How old was Bones when he did the tour of the Enterprise in Farpoint? He was like 130.
Oh, like 100.
Oh, yeah.
100 and something. Yeah.
And he was like giving him a hard time for acting like he was an old man. The average life expectancy of a healthy human, is like 150 or something in Star Trek. Like, I want to go faster than light. I want to beam from A to B. I want food of any type, whatever I want. Okay, I want all of those things. Yeah. But underneath, I'm like, I think I'd rather live to be 150 super healthy the entire time and never have to worry about anything. And I'm going to throw this out for Maple. Starfleet Dental. Okay? I just want to not have to deal with dental problems ever again. I just want it to be, like out of, I want it to be as hilarious of an idea that you need to go to a dentist as it is for wizards to look at muggles and be like, what do your parents do? They're dentists? Like, I want it to feel that ridiculous. So, knowing that it's not as cool or flashy, I'm going to go with medical advances. Uncool.
Cool or flashy. I think that's a cool choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to follow up, too, do you remember that episode in TNG where there's 3 people that were frozen in cryo?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Way back then. And then they came in. And they're like, oh, they were only frozen because it was a fad back in the day.
Yeah,
and then
cryogenics.
They came in for cryogenics, and then the medical advancements because they had all these problems, and then they were suddenly just cured. They're fine.
Don't you love it though? One of them was like had a tumor, had cancer. Yeah. The musician had just spent a lifetime doing drugs and drinking alcohol. Like he just wrecked his body. Basically, his liver was screwed. Like that whole thing. Yeah. And then the other guy had like a heart thing. It was some sort of heart problem. And all of those things, just like Beverly even says this. She's like, these were life threatening at the time, trivial for us today. Like we just fixed it.
Trivial for us today.
Oh
what is the greatest fear, man? Like Jennifer, not to out this on a podcast.
I would be terrified.
My wife Jennifer just went through breast cancer last year. Like this is the kind of thing where you don't think about it and you think about warp speed or whatever until something like this touches your life and you go back and watch Star Trek the next time and go, man, it would just have been so easy.
That would be nice, right? Just
like that medical tricorder, like Justin said. Done.
Right? That's the thing. Like, I really hope for the day that, when we're still living and certain things like breast cancer could just be known as trivial, and it's just, that would be such an amazement for that to happen. So. Yeah.
That's
so many things like that, right?
Yeah, when it just becomes trivial, man. Dude, like, and you remember even the economy too. They were even talking about.
It's like
we don't even care about the material possession of things.
Do you have a copy of the Wall Street Journal?
Yes, right.
Or I was thinking of Boimler in the recent Lower Decks. A gift card, of course. Yeah, we don't even use money.
Right.
Which, by the way,
Works bucks.
Yeah, that's like a podcast by itself. A whole topic about like economics in the 24th century, which because in all of Star Trek, complicated, right? Very complicated. We know energy credits exist. I was actually I'm rewatching TNG, so I'm getting like a lot of season 1 again, sort of early TNG, and in my opinion, early TNG is really the formation of Star Trek. Like TOS, I love it for what it is, but it is not the Starfleet and Star Trek that we know. Every single Star Trek that has come since TNG has been modeled after TNG. TNG, however, was loosely modeled off of TOS. So, I mean, that's my perspective on that. So, like, going through it again, I just watched Encounter at Farpoint. First episode, Beverly goes and she buys something from the market and goes, bill it to Dr. Crusher, charge to Dr. Crusher on the ship. I'm like, how does that work exactly? What are you charging? Right. What do you, were there prices on this? Do you just have unlimited money? What do they, like, she said, I'll take the whole bolt. You don't know how much that cost. It was made with gold and it didn't appear until a second ago. It was magic material. Could have been so expensive. How do you do that? Just charge it to my room.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because they spend a lot of time, well, relatively speaking, like bragging about how like humanity has moved past like
Material
like
things.
currency and material
Yeah.
wealth.
First
blah, blah,
Contact was a great speech.
Right?
Yeah. But you've only moved past that until you deal with an alien race that values it, right? Because they need to trade with
Yeah.
pork to like get things. And
Yes.
like so it's weird, right? So they still value things. They just do it differently and without money.
Yeah.
They've basically gone back to bartering.
And there's many episodes within DS9 where Cisco has to use Latinum in some way or another.
Yeah.
Ends up paying or bribing Quark or something. We even see him accumulate some Latinum from various reasons. Nog gives him like a whole mountain of Latinum.
Or the baseball card episode
oh,
where like Jake
Yes.
can't bid on the auction and needs Nog's help.
he says it's not my fault that your culture has stopped using money or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway, I didn't mean to derail, so that's
No, I
mine.
think it's
I
fine
would
if
say
we
medical.
derail. This is a fairly short topic, so we can get off topic as much as we want.
Okay, yeah, true. We'll come back. We'll come back to economy. But Junie, what would you, or Jennifer, what would you say?
Okay, so I actually picked what I guess some might consider a more frivolous choice, but I think
Sorry,
it
I
would
feel
be.
so judgmental now.
I think it would be wonderful for so many reasons to have an actual like real holodeck, not like just virtual reality, but actually a real holodeck for
I
so
feel like
many
a dork.
reasons.
Can I change my answer?
No, like there's just so
But
many
later.
reasons for that. And honestly, like even if we want to kind of go back to like the medical concepts, you know, I mean, the holodeck could have like a lot of like mental help. So like if you're anxious or you have anxiety, like you can go to like a really nice peaceful place on the holodeck and like relax next to like a river or something and just feel better.
Or
So
if you're
there's a
socially
lot
awkward,
of
like broccoli.
right.
Broccoli.
So that actually, I think that's my pick, which we don't have yet, and is
Well,
very
and-
sad. I mean, virtual reality is getting maybe inching closer, but it's really nowhere near the kind of expansive experience that the holodeck provides.
So true.
I do remember the first time I tried a VR headset on, like a couple years ago. Doesn't matter which one.
With the phone.
No, this was
That's
like an
most
actual
people's,
dedicated
Oh,
headset.
okay.
Which I actually own now because I think it's kind of cool. But like they have like a new experience thing to just like try it out before you have any sort of like games or apps downloaded.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is like you can pick up cartridges and like plug them into like an SNES looking console, and it will generate little games where you can like shoot guns at like targets, or you can launch a rocket ship and like like fly it around like using a virtual reality remote control. And the very first thing when it boots up is it has blue grid lines going out into the distance and forming walls. And I was like, oh my God, I'm on the holodeck.
It feels holodeck. Yeah.
I think, well, also, and the holodeck has actual medical applications, not just mental health. Well, mental health is actual health. I'm a psychologist. I can't dismiss that. But there's the episode in Voyager where the doctor creates his Cardassian, what was his specialty? Exo something. When
Which
B'Elanna
one?
gets attacked by that like parasite that like attaches to her body, the big, like human-sized bug-looking thing.
Oh God. Oh yeah. Wow.
And he ends up
I-
like basically simulating the surgery in the holodeck to figure out if he can use it to cure B'Elanna or to help
Yes.
B'Elanna.
Oh, I remember this now.
I actually wanted to bring this side up of this argument as well, because not just
Oh,
that
and you
scene, but
said
the doctor in
xenobiology.
general, xenobiology, yeah, but the doctor in general showed what holographic stuff could do, right? I mean, I think that it might be unfortunate. I always felt like this is an example of like automation replacing humans, which we're starting to see in our own society. But like the doctor is clearly the most advanced doctor, right? He's the best doctor. He does the most of all things. He may not be your favorite. He's probably my favorite.
He is my
But-
He's my favorite.
Yeah. But he's definitely the most superpowered. All right. The man programmed himself with additional skills. He flipped on some more pips and emergency command holograms. He is like taking holographic stuff to, I mean, he's done combat and been like able to like teleport around, and even Janeway in Prodigy, how she like kicked butt. Do you remember that scene where she like did that weird twitchy hologram teleport punch thing?
Oh,
with, like,
yeah.
holograms, and that's all part of the holodeck thing, which is super cool. So yeah, Big fan. So, do we get to hear Azure's now? Did we cover yours in all
No,
of
you
that
did
stuff?
not.
Okay.
Oh,
Mine is. I wanted to go last because mine has like a little bit of a story behind it that I wanted to share, and I didn't want to divert us from other people's answers until we got there. The technology I like the most or enjoy the most from Star Trek is actually Geordi's visor.
Ooh.
Oh.
Super
Wow.
specific. And it's actually kind of interesting to
Ooh.
me because I've also been rewatching TNG. I'm now on season 2. And
Yes, let's go.
the interesting thing about Geordi's visor is it's this super cool technology, but apparently he's like the only person ever to have it. Like they didn't generalize this and like give it out to the public. Like there's got to be other blind people in the Federation, but no one else has heard of a visor.
He must have had some really weird problem that made it so that whatever medical technology they had wasn't able to fix it, right? Is that?
Well, and so that's actually kind of what makes me like it so much is
Yeah.
he addresses it in a couple different episodes, but the visor, what it does is it essentially scans different wavelengths of light, and then it bypasses his eyes and connects directly to like his optic nerve, which is like the nerve that normally carries information from your eyes to the visual part of your brain.
Yeah.
I, in real life, do research with people who have cochlear implants. And cochlear implants are essentially the auditory or hearing equivalent of the visor.
Yeah.
If the cells in your ear no longer work and you can't hear things, like it's called sensory neural hearing loss, you can get this implant that basically bypasses the dead part or the non-working part of your ear to use the auditory nerve and transmit information directly to your brain. And I spent a lot of time over the last like week and a half Googling this since I came up with the question to try and figure out, because the reason I think the visor is so cool is I'm guessing it was inspired by the fact that the cochlear implant has existed commercially since the late 70s, meaning it was available like before TNG came about. And so I kind of wonder if this is one of those cool examples of like science and sci-fi kind of both inspiring each other. So like maybe Geordi's visor somewhere in the writing room or development room, they were like, hey, we have this technology for hearing now. And back then it was super new and like kind of experimental. And they were like, what if in the future we could do this for vision, blah, blah, blah. And then they just did it. And my one even nerdier follow-up point to that, as I was Googling about all this, Geordi's visor has inspired actual scientific research into restoring vision for people whose eyes have like
see, I love that.
That's so good.
And
That's the best.
so there's been a couple of experiments that seem to suggest that at least in mice we can bypass the back of the eye, the retina that has been damaged, and actually use a camera to just transmit information to the brain. But even cooler is NASA designed this device with a bunch of other engineers to help people with what's called low vision. So it's like if your eyesight's 20/70 or worse, which is usually from like macular degeneration or stuff like that, and glasses can no longer correct it, they came up with this device that essentially it looks like one of those like old school, like the little red projector type things you could put in front of your face and look at the slides from. It looks a little bit like one of those. And it just enhances your ability to read, write, and like see things. But they called it the Joint Optical Reflective Display, or JORDI.
Geordi.
for short.
Oh my God, that is so awesome.
And when I read about that, I was like, I've loved the visor for a long time, and once
Yeah.
I got into my current line of work, it like, and I'm going back and rewatching TNG, I like it even more. And when I read about the NASA thing, I was like, how cool is this? Because I think probably the cochlear implant inspired the visor, but now the visor has actually inspired modern technology to help people see.
God, that is
That's
so
so cool.
awesome.
That's
man.
amazing.
Is that like that's one of those amazing Star Trek factoids that are so encouraging and inspiring, man. I love that kind of stuff so much.
Right?
Like it's the
Yeah,
nerds
well, and-
that watch Star Trek, right? And those guys go on and change the world based on the
Well,
stuff
and
that
there's
they
no
love.
way that
That's the
current
thing.
virtual reality was not influenced by like the idea of the holodeck.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Because so many virtual reality games have like grid walls that you see in the distance and stuff
Yeah.
like that if you get too close to like the border you've drawn in the room you're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I actually was thinking about the visor in general just a couple days ago because I too am going through the beginning
was
of
it the
TNG.
episode where he transmits to the bridge?
Yeah.
Well,
that's so good.
Yeah, he has an interesting. There's an interesting bunch of stuff they do with it in the beginning, and they do very little with it as they go forward. But in the beginning, the visor is like a main thing. When they introduce Geordi, I mean, first let's talk about it, right? Like this is TNG back in the late 80s, right? Wasn't it 87 or something when the show started to come out? So really like 80s show. They were trying to be progressive and inclusive in the best traditions of Star Trek, and they brought in African American, actors, and they had Geordi and a lot of women, and sort of undid some of that good old boy stuff from TOS, right, which existed back then. He was really able to do it unapologetically in TNG, set the tone for sort of like the modern 90s vibe, right, which was much more of that kind of stuff, which was great. And they brought in, I mean, it was like inclusion of different races and women, and then also like somebody who's handicapped, and they really talk about that, right? In the beginning, he goes in and I think he's going in for like a medical physical, and Beverly is talking with him about it, and he's like sort of reciting all the, and can view the spectrum of whatever, and sees all of this stuff, and but then sort of like laments the fact that he's always in pain. Right? There's something interesting, and that she had read about him and his case before ever meeting him, because it's an interesting one. It is that rare, whatever he's got. And this visor is not a standard issue apparatus made by Starfleet Medical. This is something really unique that they haven't really seen before. It's kind of one of a kind, but they turn it into a boon for him. And how often do they do it? Right away in the Riker turns into a Q episode, he offers him his sight back, and then he doesn't want it. Naked Time, episode 2, right? He ends up going, I want to see like you, and he takes off his thing, and he's telling Tasha that he wishes he could see. But then what is interesting to me is that I just watched not Angel One. The episode with the aliens where Wesley trips and falls in the flowers and they want to kill him.
I know what you mean. I don't remember what the name of that episode is.
I can't remember the name of the episode. But but Geordi is like, they're trying to get a read on this object. It is not on their scanners. They can't figure it out. And he tells Geordi, because Geordi is a bridge officer at this moment, right? He goes, Geordi, let's get a real view. And he has him leave the bridge and go into the observation lounge and just look out the window with his visor, because his visor has like special powers that maybe even the computer doesn't have. You know what I mean? Like, he literally does this a couple of times in the first season, where he uses his visor to go out. Like, he has him not look through the view screen, but just look out the window at this thing. And it was so done up that outside of like the technological cycle that you were talking about, I just love that they did this really cool thing where they take this handicap and make it a superpower, because it was a superpower, much more in the beginning than later. They really sort of like hyped that up, and I thought that was awesome.
Well, and I don't know if you remember, but there's I don't remember what season it is. It's one of the later seasons. It's that one. It's the Masterpiece Society, where they meet like the humans who have like their whole society has been genetically engineered, so they all know exactly what they want to be from when
and
they're
they said you would have not lived, right? Isn't that episode?
Yeah, they say like no one would have been born with your, I forget what they call it, probably disability or something like that. And Geordi's response is just, I can see you just fine, sir.
Yeah.
And then the technology that his visor uses to sort of compress all the information and send it to his brain is what ends up saving their colony.
Yes.
And he ends up saying like, oh, actually, yeah, Venwick just mentioned it in chat.
Yeah, he did. I was thinking that too.
Yeah, so like I like that they come back to it. They address it as like someone is like, basically saying like, oh, it must suck to be blind, and Geordi's like, yeah, screw you, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's cool, like, especially with who they chose, right? Like, LeVar Burton is and has always been amazing, but back then he was coming right off of like Roots, right? It was like he was just such a great character in that way. I've always loved the actor. I love the dude. He's one of those guys who's like a big friend of the franchise. He's always been around. Loves his role in Star Trek. He's been known for really great things, right? Kunta Kinte was one of the most iconic characters in anything of that realm, talking about, racism and slavery and all that. It was an amazing piece that he did. But he came and was very proud to do what he did on Star Trek and represent a whole new sort of disenfranchised community, right? It was such an awesome thing. They really did take this weakness and make it into this awesome strength. And he stayed very true to that the entire time. I did feel bad for the actor. I don't know how much you've seen of this, like what it was like to look through this. It was basically, what was the thing that it was? It was a piece of car equipment that they modeled the visor off of. It's
I don't remember.
Forgot what it actually is. It looks just like it when you see it, but they decided that they would make this visor, but he couldn't see anything. I mean, it was really, really bad. And I felt bad for him because in the future, when they finally were like, all right, LeVar, like you can come back into the movies. We won't make you wear the visor. But then he had like the most uncomfortable contacts ever. Like the guy couldn't catch a break, but I did like the contacts.
Apparently he was pretty opposed to the visor, not because of being like a blind character or anything, but because he felt like, at least initially, I remember some interview with him like after the series had wrapped, because, you know, you express a lot of emotion through the eyes, and basically no one could ever see his eyes as Geordi. And so he was worried that like it would make it look like he was doing a poor job, like emoting, which was not an issue for Geordi. He was so good.
Yeah.
Oh, he was so good, man. LeVar Burton was one of those amazing dramatic actors that they got in to do Star Trek, which to this day, I think is probably the single most defining feature of what ends up giving Star Trek the feel that it does. They, especially back then, doesn't it seem insane to you that they took this thing, which at the time was a meme at its best? Science fiction was not Shakespeare. It was literally the opposite. It was the goofiest thing. There hadn't been a lot of examples of dramatic, life-changing, culture-changing science fiction. That didn't really happen. We've talked about that on the podcast before. But they always get these classically trained, dramatic actors. Every captain was from the stage. Every captain was a stage actor. So this big sort of thing. And it made such a difference in the tone of the show. And LeVar Burton, huge shout out to him, because that was a big part of it, man. When he came and he did that, that was a name. That was a real name. And they found a real way to get him into that show in an awesome way. And I think that I've told you the story about him and Guinan, right? Whoopi Goldberg. Mm-hmm. That's how she got on the show, which is my favorite thing ever. Just a quick story on that one. If you guys don't know how Guinan got onto, or Whoopi Goldberg came onto the show, first of all, super important to recognize that Whoopi Goldberg was like a A-list actor at the time. She's kind of like a talk show thing now. She did a talk show or whatever, but back then you got to remember this was like The Color Purple and some of her more like big Tootsie, was it not Tootsie, what am I thinking of? Color Purple's enough, right? A big dramatic thing, which was absolutely incredible. And she was this huge actor that was...
You mean Sister Act?
Well, Sister Act, of course, is my favorite movie she was in, but that hadn't been made yet, I don't think. That was in the 90s.
That was during TNG.
During TNG. So basically, Whoopi Goldberg, who was this huge actress doing blockbuster movies, bumped into LeVar Burton at like at an award show and was like, "Hey, I see you doing Star Trek. That's awesome. I would love to be on this show. I would love to be on the show." And LeVar, who's like, a big fan of Whoopi, was like, "Oh my God, it's been awesome. We love it. That's great. You're hilarious." And they like left. And it wasn't like a whole year of the show went by, right? All of season 1 goes by. And then LeVar bumps into Whoopi Goldberg at another actor function, right? And she goes, I was really thinking I would hear from you. I really would love like something on the show. Like I really want to be. He goes, "Oh my God, you were serious? Like I told my friends, we thought you were joking. Like we thought this was a joke. We thought you were just pulling our leg." Like she was and we've talked about this, and God, guys, how have we not on this podcast pulled up that thing, Justin, that you found, that article back then? That needs to be the next one we do. But seriously, like the way that we look back and venerate TNG, right? This is the single most iconic Star Trek. It is the cornerstone of all Star Trek, but it wasn't then. It was considered a terrible gamble. Newspaper article? Yeah, the newspaper article. Yes. So TNG was reviled by fans. They were already Star Trek fans. They were furious that TNG was coming out. It wasn't a guarantee because they had a pre-existing fan base. The people that already liked Star Trek, they hated the idea of the show. They were infuriated because the real cast of TOS, which they always felt like got robbed, right? They kind of feel about TOS like we feel about Firefly, right? A show that was so good that didn't get appreciated until later and really should have gotten a better shot. And now they're making a brand new series, finally giving it the attention that it wants on the back of all of the TOS movies that just came out. They were actually making money. So now they're like, whoa, now TOS is back making real money and you guys are going to relaunch a show and not use them. They hated it. They were pissed. And so season 1 was considered to be like a huge gamble, not thinking it was going to do good. And LeVar thought, why would this A-list actor want to be on our show? And so when she came back and said that again, he went and told the producers and they were like, oh my God. And they built her an entire set. They built 10 Forward just for her. They made the character of Guinan and it changed the show forever. They were so thrilled to have her on board. So LeVar Burton is sort of like at the heart of that. And I just always loved that guy. So he's in Star Trek Online too, by the way, has done his character amazingly out here. He does commercials, does video games. I just love this dude. So LeVar Burton is top notch for me.
A follow up on the Whoopi Goldberg thing. I remember reading, this was an after the fact interview with her where apparently when they finally did take her seriously about like, oh, she actually does want to be on the show. I think she said basically, I'd be willing to just like clean the floor in the background. I just want to be on the show.
Don't you love that passion? And then they made a whole
character for her,
right?
Oh my God. And of course we can't leave out why. Okay, so that's one of the greatest things. Listen to her talk about Star Trek. Whoopi Goldberg adores Star Trek in the same level of passion that we do. She was a young, not well off Black girl growing up just in that time where things were not great, and she was sitting there on the floor with her head in her hands, kicking her feet back and forth, watching Star Trek every week because it was, she says it so succinctly. She's so profound about it because for her, it means so much. It's that we were, there in the future. I saw Uhura on the bridge, right? A Black woman represented well in the future on television at a time where that just wasn't happening. You know what I mean? It was such a big thing for her. She grew up idolizing that and really appreciating the social impact that the show had on her and her surroundings. So it's one of those things that just makes you. It's like the Nichelle Nichols story with Martin Luther King Jr. Right? Like that she almost left that show. It was almost this whole thing almost unraveled, guys. Uhura almost left the show. She did not super appreciate her role, and this is one of the single greatest stories that was ever told, that ever happened in the mythos that is Star Trek. But the fact that Nichelle Nichols almost left Star Trek after, and didn't leave and inspired generations of women and African Americans forward, but she almost left, and it was an actual meeting and conversation with Martin Luther King Jr. that said, don't leave. She told him she was going to leave, and he said, don't leave. You're making a difference in a way that is so profound. Like it may not be fun, but stick it out. You're doing real work, and she did. She listened, she stayed. That was Whoopi. And then, what Star Trek ended up becoming, man. You never know, like what little thread could have unraveled the whole thing. But this is just one of those, like, it almost doesn't sound real, man. Isn't that just crazy to you? It's insane that Star Trek has done so much like this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And thinking about like Whoopi being a fan of Star Trek, I love that we were talking the other day off the podcast about Tawny Newsome and her loving DS9, but Dawn Lewis, who plays Carol Freeman, the captain, also grew up loving Star Trek. And it's just
that's
so cool how many people on Star Trek were inspired by Star Trek because of how long it's been around now.
Oh God, right? I love that. Yeah, and Justin and I have talked about this before. Like even his dad and like whole generations of people that grew up watching Star Trek, and it meant so much to them, right? I mean, God, dude, like how many examples of this are there? Like these cultural phenomenons in TV where everyone of a generation watches a show, sure, and everybody likes it, sure. It's like we were talking the other day about how Game of Thrones was a cultural phenomenon, changed everything. Everyone watched it. It was a water cooler show in a way that there never had been before, right? Just absolutely insane. I mean, we're less than 10 years out from this thing, right? And like, how many people defined their life by it? Nobody. I mean, it's a whole different thing. Somehow Star Trek reaches in and grabs a hold of something so deep and meaningful in someone, like the real fans, you know, the people that grew up with this, that somehow it is capable of touching and affecting someone in a permanent way that can shape their entire life or shape the career choice that they make, you know, like some sort of big thing. It's one of my favorite things to see when you listen to these guys at the conventions, the actual actors, all the stories that they've heard throughout the years. Like, they're so humbled by it. And how could you not be? Like, your character that you did on this one job shaped my family forever. I mean, like, that's just, it's the wildest thing. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I look at it in that perspective. It's like I watch Star Trek and I feel like the way that it's inspired, I want to say millions of people, is just because, like, when you take a look and you watch it, it's like something that you can reflect on and say, we can do this. Like, we can actually do this. Now, when we're taking a look at, you know, Game of Thrones, I'm not coming out of that show saying, oh, well, now I want a dragon. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I do.
Like, I do, but like, is it possible? No, not really.
Yeah.
But
I also come out of Game of Thrones thinking I don't want to do that.
right?
Yeah, that's also true.
I mean, but when we're watching Star Trek and I see, you know, leadership aspects, development and health, right? Like all these things, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people have said to themselves, like, this is the study that I want to get into. This is what I want to try to progress to, you know, and to evolve as a human society, which is, I think, is amazing, is what this television series can do, right? So I take a look at that, and even if you're not as scientific or in the engineering thing, there's so many tactful things that you can take away from it in such a social approach too as well, right? Like how Picard usually commands, right? And you can tell the difference between how Kirk does it, and, you know, going back to your favorite captains as to like what their style is on how they can get from one objective to the other, right? So I've taken a lot of it away, you know, in my own daily life, as to where I take those and apply them to myself and what I can do in leadership teams and so forth like that too. So a lot of my mentors that I have engaged myself with over time through school, you know, they were in love with Star Trek. They brought a lot of the things that you can take in similarity to from the shows from Star Trek specifically and correlated to what they were trying to teach me, not just my dad, right? Yeah. So I think it's just a crazy phenomenon of what you can, you know, what we've embarked on and what we're trying to take a look at now. So I think everyone needs Star Trek, you know?
Not to meme on it. It's funny when you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, like, it's like the what would Jesus do, but it's like what would Picard do? And somehow that, like, as much of a meme as that sounds, I literally like it sounds so cringe, bro. Like I'm fully aware.
I would buy a shirt with that on it.
That crosses my mind. They exist actually, and bumper stickers exist. It's
real.
They do. I seriously, I think it, man. Like everybody has like knee-jerk reactions to things that are negative, you know, like social situations, little challenges that we interpersonal challenges we experience on a day-to-day basis, right, at our work, with our friends, whatever it is. There's always a knee-jerk reaction that's negative, and then there's like a more reasoned reaction that you try to apply you know, morality to, and then you try to make yourself, at least that's what I do, I try to make myself take the path that I know is better, even if it's not quite as like emotionally satisfying in that moment. You want to be like, well, screw that guy, he cut me off on the road, you know what I mean? Like there's always something like that. And as much as people, I think this is a common thing in religion, but I honestly like Star Trek is affecting me so much. Like I do the same thing. I'm like, I know there's a right way and a wrong way to deal with something. And to me, I guess the morality, the altruism and the morality that is engendered, you know, day in and day out of me watching Star Trek my whole life, like that, it's hard for that not to be like a pillar that you go back to. Like, I guarantee you, I have rewatched how many episodes of Star Trek? Can somebody Google it? How many episodes of Star Trek are there total? I guarantee you, I have watched more hours of Star Trek on repeat than any religious person has ever reread the Bible in their life. It has been that many times. So it's, of course, it is intrinsically locked into me in that morality in a positive way, much in the same sort of positive way that people do the other. I'm not downing on that. I'm pointing out the excessive extreme that I have definitely seen it. So it definitely, that morality is there. And I think that's really positive. And that in itself is what I'm always worried about in modern Trek. Now, I know we try to touch on this subject gingerly, but I get worried when Star Trek veers away from that reliable morality. Do you guys do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also real quick want to jump in. I did Google it for you, Merrick. According to Wikipedia, there are 855 episodes in the Star Trek franchise across 43 seasons of television.
Yo,
Whoa!
that's insane.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
And I've seen every single one of them multiple times, except for
the animated series.
the animated series.
We need to do that. We need to.
I've never seen
that.
a single episode of it.
Same.
You haven't either?
Same.
Azure? Really? None of us?
So then we have to watch Party that though.
Jennifer?
The animated series.
No, I haven't seen the animated series.
That'll be a
It's
weird-
the only one I haven't seen.
We have no right doing this podcast.
All right, guys, we
All
have to
right, guys,
retire.
shut down until we watch the animated series.
Oh, man.
Call yourself Star Trekkies and Trekkers and you can't even watch the animated series.
I want to come back quick to something Justin said. I was doing Google searches that I will explain off the podcast because it would dox myself pretty hard. But I ended up on StarTrek.com and they have like this series that they ran called Fan Files, where they talk about people for reasons that are fans of the show. And this one person who got profiled, we were talking about Justin, you were saying like Star Trek inspiring like the best in people or like motivations based on Star Trek. This person has what's called craniofacial diversity. They were born with a cleft palate, their ears and eye sockets and even cheekbones didn't like fully develop, blah, blah, blah. So needless to say, in our current modern world, they struggled a lot growing up with like bullying and like social stuff.
Sure.
But apparently one of the things that sort of got them through was they fell in love with Star Trek: The Next Generation because it showed a bunch of alien races whose faces looked very different from a human. And everyone got along and like people like respected each other and respected differences and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that person is now a PhD who does research on craniofacial diversity
That's awesome.
and like treatments and stuff like that.
There's no better outcome. That's amazing. That's absolutely awesome. And that's what I mean about that whole thing. Like that's what Star Trek is supposed to be about. You know, I think we drift from that from time to time, but I think, you know, pointing out Next Generation is probably the best example of that because they were really setting that tone. I think different TV shows that come out from an original feel like they need to branch a bit from the original tone, but like because it's hard. It is hard for me to think of TNG as like a true spin-off TV series. I feel like everything that came after TNG is a spin-off of TNG.
But TNG feels like its own new thing compared to TOS.
It does. Even in that regard, most of the dealings that TOS had with other races was not through the same lens, right? Like TNG. And again, I just went through the episode where Wesley trips on flowers and, you know, is about to be killed. That is literally like the exploration, the almost the initial exploration of the Prime Directive, right? The Prime Directive is sort of like a big deal. I think before that, the only real mention of the Prime Directive in its current form was in the episode that preceded it, which was when they're talking to Portal. It's the Ferengi episode, remember? And the Ferengi are trying to tell the Portal guy all these reasons why they should not trust or dislike the Federation. And he says, you know, like we withhold vital technologies. We have sometimes allowed the strong to overcome the weak. Like they sort of touch on the Prime Directive, but it's really that aspect of the Prime Directive that's explored there. And that is just not the way that TOS explored the galaxy, guys. Like there wasn't through that lens. Even if it did exist, they were the good guys. Don't get me wrong. TOS was definitely like in every occasion, they were not the bullies. They were the good guys, but it wasn't like we're out for peaceful exploration. We want to add to the Federation. The Prime Directive is important. Regardless of them being bad, we're going to be good. You know, like that is the morality that we saw a lot of in Star Trek. And to be honest, that was the common go-to morality of media and culture sort of in that era of the 90s, right? This sort of like two wrongs don't make a right. Like that was a real thing. But it was really personified in TNG. Going back through TOS, I love it, but Kirk, it was about exploration, military defensiveness. They just kind of came across a lot of bullies. They weren't really out for peace. And also, you know, just make out with as many various alien facial ridges as possible. The guy's got a sweet
Yeah.
collection. Did someone just warp in a Genesis device? What was that?
No,
I'm
it
assuming that was
looks like
Commander
it.
Justin because he told me he
It's
got a
literally the
Genesis
Genesis
device
device.
recently.
Oh my goodness.
That's so good.
Nice garden here.
Slight tangent, since I just brought up this episode. Speaking of the Prime Directive, has anyone watched that particular episode? And it's killing me because I want to know what the name of the episode is. Where
The Wesley one?
Yeah,
It's actually called Justice.
Justice.
Oh.
wow.
And
Okay, that's
it gets the
aptly
name from
named.
when Picard gives the line of how can it be justice if it's like absolute or whatever he says near the end.
Yes.
Mhm.
And he's demanding the wiggle room in the Prime Directive that he basically fights for and acts upon for the rest of the series, right? Like what's her name? The Admiral Sati, who comes in and she's like,
yeah.
"Did you know that you have violated the
Yeah.
Prime Directive 8 times since you've taken the command of the
Oh,
Enterprise?"
in the drum.
that was
In
so- the
Drumhead,
Drumhead.
which is easily one of the greatest episodes of TNG
Yeah.
ever.
Such a good episode.
Oh my God, Simon Tarses! I'll never forget it. That whole thing was such a big deal. And she says, I must say, Captain, it surprised the hell out of me. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't really surprise me. He definitely does violate the Prime Directive, but in the same. I mean, that's what makes the good captain, right? How many times did we see the good captain follow the rules no matter what and make the wrong call? That's what makes a good captain, I think. But what I really wanted to say is in the episode Justice, isn't it fascinating? Yeah, Venwick is another Picard speech episode, and Picard monologues, like those speeches, man. That's what makes TNG. It's so good.
I love those.
They're literally what defines it. In fact, Justin and I were talking about it. Actually, no, it was Azure. Azure, you told me, you were like, when I watched Strange New Worlds, and after the first
yep.
episode, when Pike did a monologue, he did like a morality speech. You knew it was going to be real Trek, right? Because that's
Yeah,
I
I think I said he's not quite at Picard levels of monologue yet.
Yeah, but he's
I
on
think
his
he
way.
could get there.
He's just a little bit more concise about it, but they're there and they're really good. But what was interesting to me rewatching this was, what does the Prime Directive really mean? These guys are clearly a pre-warp civilization. Why are they even there? I mean,
So I have also just recently gone back to season 1.
Did that
and
occur
it
to you?
really didn't make any sense because they seemed surprised that like the Enterprise crew could come from another star. Like, what are you doing
Exactly.
visiting this planet?
yeah.
yes. And they have aliens in space, but that's God, right? That was God
Yeah.
in orbit. So they're clearly, I mean, they look like they were nice gardeners, but but pre-industrial. You know what I mean? They just
Yeah.
didn't really have anything going on in terms of industry or
To be
technology.
fair, they've got it kind of easy with gardening if you kill people who step near your plants.
Only in the punishment
Yeah,
zone.
only in
Yeah.
the punishment zone. Yeah, sorry.
And yet again, I'm reminded my hot take, and then I'm just going to throw that out there into the universe. I'm a fan of Wesley. That was a great Wesley episode. In fact, I actually really liked. He was cool. He was excited. This is just after he'd been promoted to acting ensign. He's on the bridge. He gets sent down to the planet to. I think it was to gauge its ability to be like a shore leave location for
Yeah.
young people. That was like the thing that Picard said. And then, but he has this moment, right, where they're like, is everyone going to die because you're going to stop them from executing me? And he won't, he like fights that. He doesn't want to do that. This is back in the
Picard
days where,
basically tells him it's not his decision, and Wesley's like, well, it kind of is.
yeah, it's even worse than
Right.
that. Cause this is still in the Wesley is just the boy.
Yeah.
This is in that era of TNG. So this isn't about you, boy. Or I wasn't talking to you, boy. Or something like that. And he's like, I'm sorry, Captain, but I think this really does have to do with me. And earlier when the punishment guys come up, right, and they're like, did you do this crime? Did you do this? You freely admit this. She says, I'm with Starfleet. And we don't lie.
Yeah.
It's just adorable. Like, I just love his
Yeah.
character. I don't care what anyone says. I am a Wesley Crusher fan. So take that, internet.
Same.
A crush.
Yeah.
I have a
on-
crusher.
Crusher.
All right, we'll edit that part out.
Thanks. Yeah,
I
that
had a
was an
follow up
interesting
on the
one.
Justice episode, but I don't remember what it was.
Pop quiz. Did you know that God, that starship, was seen and reused in another episode as another alien ship? Yep,
Really?
clear as day, absolutely clear as day. Pop quiz, what is it? Because I can tell you the episode. I don't remember the name of the episode.
I'm gonna take a shot in the dark here because I have no idea. Is
Ooh.
it the one where there's the 2 people left alive on the planet and like he basically conjures up like a fake ship to scare the Enterprise away?
No.
Okay.
No.
I don't remember
no.
what either of the ships look like,
No,
but I just took a shot where there
that
was a
ship
random
is
star
in
ship.
STO though, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The ones with the guy that killed all the Husnock.
Yeah.
I didn't just kill one Husnock. I killed all the Husnock. He talks like this. So no. The okay, so this is gonna blow your mind. The episode, and I freaking love this episode. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you guys right now. My favorite Star Trek episodes, period, are the ones what I like to call the mystery episodes, where the show starts and there's some crazy premise, and you're like, what the heck is going on? And it takes you sort of the whole takes either you or the cast or the crew or both to figure out what the heck's going on over the course of the whole thing. My favorite example of this ever, like cannot be beat, is in DS9 when O'Brien is running for his life from the station and
When
he is being
he's
persecuted by everyone. He thinks they're all like replaced or something.
That's
That
such a
episode.
good episode.
Oh my God, it's so good. The first time that you watch that when you don't know what's going on, are you kidding me? It fools everyone because it's that good. They are crazy and he's sane. It is so good. So that's one of my favorites. But in this instance, it's TNG and it's the episode where everyone loses their memory and they don't know
Yes.
who's who. Right?
What
and
an
there's
episode.
what an episode. And there's like everyone loses their memory and they're all still there, but then there's one extra guy, right? And he's
Yep.
like the executive officer or whatever.
The executive officer.
Yes, I forgot his name, but he is a representative of an alien race who is trying to get everyone on the ship to think that they are part of like this war and to go and destroy this adversary, right? That they're in war and they're supposed to have radio silence and this whole thing. The ship at the very end, the ship that is basically their whole command structure is in this ship, but it had no firepower at all. It had no way to defend itself, and they almost
Yeah,
destroyed
it had
it.
like lasers.
Lasers, yeah, that's the same ship. That's the same ship.
I never noticed that.
It totally is. Go back and look. It's gonna blow your mind.
Sorry, I gotta come back to the mystery thing with O'Brien though, because
Yes,
can we talk for one
So
second
good.
about O'Brien is one of my favorite characters of all time.
he's the best.
I love that there was a clone made of O'Brien meant to sabotage this like peace convention thing that was supposed to be happening on
Yes.
DS9.
Yep.
And even the clone that was meant to betray it was like so positive and so like
So working man.
Starfleet that like he suspected everyone else was trying to sabotage and did everything he could to like save it.
to save it, and then gets
Even
all the way there.
quote unquote evil O'Brien is still like the
Still
best
good.
person.
He actually never did anything bad. The entire episode, from beginning to end, he only did everything he could to try to protect that delegation or whatever it
DS9,
was that
yeah.
was coming on DS9. And then the very last words out of his mouth, "Tell Keiko I love her." That was
Yep.
that was it. He's so O'Brien. Also, O'Brien does one of my favorite lines in all of Star Trek ever. Is one of the loudest laughs I've ever done on a TV show. And it was when they crash land on the planet in the Jem'Hadar ship, and they're stranded, they're marooned, they lost their ship. The Jem'Hadar are on the planet, they're totally screwed. And he gets onto the shore and he goes, "Oh, damn it!" And everyone looks and he goes, "What? I tore my pants." And everyone goes, "What?"
I
He goes,
remember that.
I tore my pants. I guess we're really in trouble now. it's just the best levity ever. Like I'm not doing it justice, but in that episode, it's just laugh out loud, hysterical. I adore Miles O'Brien. He's such an awesome dude.
And he's seen stuff too, which they touch on a lot in DS9.
Oh God, yes.
Because like most of our experience in Star Trek, like is super positive. It's like this like enlightened future, especially in TNG. And like people like live in relative comfort, blah blah blah. But like in DS9, not only do they have the Dominion War stuff going on, but they touch on O'Brien's past with the Cardassian War.
Oh yes.
And like he's one of the few characters you ever get a lot of exposure to who's had like frontline on the ground combat experience. And I
Which-
kind of actually love how they touch on him trying to deal with like relating to Cardassians without hatred.
Which, by the way, and this is so cool, was not some sort of random character rewrite for DS9, as a lot of people think it was. That actually came out with his old captain in TNG.
Yep.
All of that was described. The Cardies,
what was the captain?
right?
The Cardies.
I almost had it.
It's not Maxwell, is it?
No, it is. It is Captain Maxwell.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
I always
You
get
got it.
confused about which captain I'm talking about.
Captain Maxwell, and he does the song, right? The
I don't.
the
remember
minstrel,
song.
or whatever. Da, 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 da. I have it in my head, but it's he basically recounts his
Bayou
war
Trinidad. stories,
right? Like he basically had this traumatic experience. In fact, was that Setlik 3?
Yes.
The horror story that
He's
he's
the
always
hero-
talking about?
I mean, Setlik 3 is what they call him, like the
They
hero of
referenced
Setlik
it a
3
lot
in DS9.
Yes.
Oh, in that creepy episode when they're on Empoknor, and like
Oh,
Garrick
yeah,
loses
that's
his mind.
Garrick goes crazy. Yes,
Yeah.
and he
I would
calls him
love
the
I
hero.
would love to battle against the hero of Setlik 3,
Yes, to play that sort of
whatever
chess
Cardassian
thing.
game.
I forgot the name of it. But yes, that is, and it was definitely unpacked in TNG. That one episode was amazing. Captain Maxwell just kind of went crazy, was flying through the neutral zone with Cardassians, blowing stuff up. They had to get him out, and it was a massacre. It might have been Setlik 3. I would be surprised if it wasn't, to be honest. So I'd have to go back and watch the TNG episode, but I think it's referencing the same event. And Captain Maxwell's family was killed. Remember, and it was like a really uncool against civilians raid that they did, and that was a profound episode because he has seen a lot of stuff. But my favorite interaction, and this is one of the best interactions that O'Brien ever has, especially about his trauma in the war, was in this episode in TNG. Remember when he's talking with the Cardassian, one of the lower level Cardassians who's there on the ship. He, in fact, one of them I think ends up scoping out Federation technology and then gets in trouble, right? They're with Gulma Set, who is actually Mark Alimo, right? Who plays his first Cardassian in this episode. And so but he has an interaction with the other one where they're in 10 forward, right? And he's racist, but he hasn't caught himself being racist. And then he goes home to Keiko and he's like, you know what? For some reason I see other people being racist about Cardassians. It's weird. And then Keiko goes, well, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it makes sense. People really went through some stuff, and it's really applying to him. And he's not seeing anyone else be racist except himself. And then he ends up going and sitting down and having a drink with this Cardassian at 10 forward. And finally, eventually, and the guy's super nice, right? He's actually a really nice Cardassian. And at the end, he says the big line. He goes, "It's not you I hate, Cardassian. It's who I became because of you."
Oh, mm-hmm.
Whew. I mean, man, that for that era of television, that was just big, and they expounded on that throughout an entire 7-series television show in DS9, making him one of the most profound characters in that whole political dynamic. Right? So good.
Yeah,
really good.
I actually think Star Trek has a couple of, well, there's one in particular that's striking me at the moment when you mentioned O'Brien's line, but they have a couple of episodes that touch really well on hatred or bigotry or whatever.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that has stuck with me forever, partially because my dad and I always joke about some of the lines from it, is I don't remember the name of it, but there's an episode from Voyager where Chakotay is off on some shuttle mission and he crash lands on the planet where the people all use kind of weird phrasings like "wrestle your trembles to rages."
Yes.
And he's essentially
Yeah.
kidnapped by this faction and trained to hate their enemies, the Nemesis. Oh,
the
I bet the
Nemesis.
episode's
I was sitting here trying to
Nemesis.
figure out what it was called. The Nemesis. Yeah.
Oh, we just watched that episode
Do you
recently.
You don't fathom the Nemesis.
You don't fathom the Nemesis. Yes. Yeah.
But one of my
Oh, that was
favorite
so
parts
good.
about that episode is at the very end, he gets rescued. He's unbrainwashed and whatever, and he meets the ambassador from the other faction that he was sort of trained
the
to
Nemesis, the bad faction.
hate. And I remember the line of, "I wish it was as easy to stop hating as it was to start." It's just such a good line.
Doesn't that give you goosebumps, dude? That is that's so profound. And sometimes it's just a single line. It's so good. It's so good like that.
Yeah.
And honestly, and we've talked about this a lot, okay? Poor Chakotay. He doesn't.
yeah.
He just doesn't have all the best episodes, man. He doesn't have a lot of good things. But that was a stellar episode, and it was all him, dude. That was all him.
Yeah.
I felt like it fit him well. He was the star of that show. It was almost exclusively him in terms of Federation cast, and it was really good and profound. That was a solid one. Before we move off of just before we get too far away from it, I wanted to pop quiz you guys again.
Oh yeah.
Gul Macet is the first Cardassian that we see, and it's played by Marc Alaimo, who ends up playing Gul Dukat famously in all of Deep Space Nine, the single most famous Cardassian ever. I'd put him even more of an iconic Cardassian above Garrick, to be honest. He's such a plot, device.
I would agree with that.
So he played Gul Macet, the first real leadership Cardassian that we saw on TNG before DS9, leading up to DS9. Up to that point, Marc Alaimo played 2 other roles, even that early in TNG. What are they? And one of them, if you don't already know, is going to make your head explode because it's crazy.
I'm excited to hear the answer because I'm like 90% sure you've told me this fact before, and I've already forgotten. So
I think I've heard it from you before,
but I don't remember the answer. So I'm excited to hear.
Neither
it again.
do I. Yeah.
Okay, so the other is one of the, if not the first Romulan that we end up seeing on TNG.
Yes. Yeah.
He plays the Romulan commander who comes charging across the neutral zone because they too have lost a bunch of colonies along the edge of the neutral zone, being scooped up out of planets, which we find out eventually is the Borg. This is like a huge foreshadowing, right? This is way early,
Yeah,
but
like
we
a
end up
season
seeing
and a
him.
half before, right?
Yes. And I'm going to say right now, T-Bach, thank you, Angie. This is hilarious because if you go back and watch, it's quite hysterical because it's 2 Romulans on the bridge of that ship. One is Marc Alaimo being his fabulous self because the man can do no wrong, in my opinion. He's such a good actor. And the other one is the cringiest acting I've ever seen in my life. This is opinion, but go back and watch it. That other guy, he's talking like this, trying to sound as creepy and deep voiced as possible, and it's awful. So when you guys get to it, please come back and tell me what you think.
Gotta stop throwing that in.
No, it must be there.
Dude.
And the other one, that's not the one that's gonna blow your mind. The other one is gonna wreck you. You ready for this? Because there's no way you could know. So in the very same episode as Justice that we've been talking about all night long.
No.
In that episode.
No, what?
Yes. On that episode, before they get to this planet, they pick up 2 delegates from 2 different species. The Antikins and the something or other. They're like primates.
Are those the ones that are
lizards.
trying to hunt each other on the
They're
ship?
constantly trying to hunt and eat each other on the ship. The main primate guy is Marc Alaimo.
No.
Yes.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
That's
he
cool,
talks, he has
but
talking
really hard
lines.
to believe.
But as far as I can tell, it's absolutely dubbed because he could barely move his mouth in that giant rubber mask.
Yeah.
So it's dubbed and it's weirdly processed with some sort of, audio software. So it's hard to tell. But that's freaking Marc Alaimo, dude. Is that the most wild thing you've ever heard in your life? It blew my mind.
What the
I couldn't
hell?
believe it.
Would
Yes.
have never guessed.
And
Like,
he went
you could have
from
given
that
me
to
100
Dukat.
guesses.
Yeah, I would have never gotten that. I would have never gotten that. That's crazy.
It rocked my world, dude. I'll never forget it now when I see him. Like, oh my God, that's Marc Alaimo. And I always think of Gul Dukat as freaking tall. Don't you? Doesn't
Yeah.
he seem tall?
Yeah.
I was watching it because I've
posture.
known this fact for like a long time. But today or yesterday or whatever it was when I was watching this episode, I was watching it and I was watching him standing there, the character that I now know is Marc Alaimo, sitting there talking with Riker. And I'm like, he looks so short. But Riker, Jonathan Frakes, is 6'3". He's tall. He's actually very tall.
I did know that Jonathan Frakes was tall.
Yeah, dude, Vanwick, it might be the neck. Maybe the neck just makes him feel very long. But here's actually another really cool tidbit for you. They designed the Cardassian neck
because of him,
Marc
right?
Alaimo's neck. Yes, it was.
Really?
They were just so inspired by. He's got this long neck. I mean, that's literally him, and they designed the whole thing around that. Is that crazy?
I never knew that. That's really interesting.
Isn't that wild?
That's another one. So I remember you had told me the Romulan fact before, and and you told me about the neck thing too.
Yes.
But
Sorry, I like to.
I had
quiz
forgotten the
Romulan.
Romulan. No, I forgot the Romulan thing.
What was the name of the alien dude?
Oh,
Oh, the one that I'm talking about. I kind of know it, but I don't know how to pronounce it. And here's why. It's uncredited. That it's Marco Limo. That's uncredited.
Yeah.
And because it's uncredited, his name is not actually listed. It's only listed in the script because it's never actually said. And when you read it, it is practically unpronounceable. Angie, help me out. Literally, like you look at it and you're like, I'm not really sure how to say that, and they never say it in the show. So there's just no. I'm not really sure. But it's a weird name. It's a weird name. Oops. We'll have to dig that up.
He played another character in TNG though too, from what I'm looking at now.
Marco Limo?
Yeah.
Let's see. Goma said.
So wait,
T-Box.
was he
That's
the? You said
T-Box.
he was the primate one or the lizard one?
The primate one.
The primate, yeah. And there's one more. One more.
Wait, of Marco Limo?
Yeah. Apparently.
I'm trying to think of what it is.
Yeah, we'll probably find out real quick.
It's gonna kill me. Although really quickly, I guess I'm gonna have to look this up. One sec.
I mean, I'm looking up what he might have been because I can't think of anything.
Marco Limo TNG.
Yeah, there's one more.
Yeah, you're so right, dude. Oh my god, I wasn't even trying to look it up. I would have rather tried to get the trivia, right? Like I do, but I was trying to look up the other alien's name, and I saw a picture of the guy. I don't know his name, but I should have seen it coming. I do remember that. It's the episode where Data's head is found. It's
Time Zero.
Time Zero.
Mhm.
He's the poker shark, man.
Yeah.
It's so good. Did you
That's
find the name
crazy to
of
see
the
that.
character though? The
Frederick LaRouque.
Well, the one that you can't pronounce, yeah, I also can't pronounce it.
oh, there it is.
Badar and apostrophe
Badar.
D apostrophe D.
Yeah, Badar
Nudid.
and apostrophe D apostrophe D.
Nudid.
So anyway, that's it. He's definitely one of those like been everywhere in Star Trek actors. He's just like a part of the franchise in so many random ways. I love that so much, man. Star Trek does that a lot, man. They find their favorites, the ones that are really good actors that they'll pass around from series to series. I mean, they like hop from show to show, and do these little bit parts. Because that's the thing about Star Trek, right? It's like you might only have an episode at a time, maybe two-parter at the most. But the amount of dialogue and the dramatic delivery required, they're like heavy-duty parts. They're not like you show up at a soda joint and order a drink or whatever. Like it's always like you got some sort of big delivery, man. It's heavy. So they get these actors that they like who can come in and work like that. Do that kind of work and then leave. One of my favorite examples of that is John Rhys Davies. Oh my god, I love that man so much. He played Da Vinci in Voyager.
And has
Voyager,
some really great moments in Voyager.
Yeah, he does.
Although-
Again, a multiple episode thing, right? He's in several episodes. They're not back to back. He comes back and reprises it. But every scene he's in, and I said this to Jennifer last time we were watching it, I love Kate Mulgrew. You guys have heard me say it. I think she's an absolute legend. But every scene that John Rhys Davies is in, he steals the show. He steals that camera. He puts a vacuum in there. No one else can get that same energy, man. He is that character. He's incredible.
I know you and Jennifer have been rewatching Voyager, at least recently.
Yeah.
I doubt you've made it to this episode yet, but do you remember the episode where some alien steals a bunch of technology off of Voyager? And one of it is the doctor's oh my gosh.
The mobile
mobile
emitter.
emitter?
Yeah, the mobile emitter,
emitter.
and it embodies Da Vinci on the planet.
Yes, because
And
it's
he's
more than just
interpreting
that.
everything as if he's in the new world.
Yes, in America. He made it to America.
Oh, that's actually the one that we did just watch.
Oh, nice.
No, that was
No?
about 8 episodes ago. But yes.
Oh, 8 episodes ago. Okay.
Yes.
But like, I love that Tuvok ends up being like, wow, Da Vinci was like really a brilliant guy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because he kind of rolled his eyes at it at first, right? He was kind of
Yeah.
like, and then at one point, I think,
Well, yeah, because he was like, this hologram can't possibly help us.
yeah, exactly. Esato, I should say. So no, yeah, he's so good in that episode, and that was in that episode they stole not only the mobile emitter but literally the Voyager main computer
core, right?
Yeah, the computer core. But that was that a 2-part episode?
It feels like it, but I don't remember.
I can't remember either. I want to say that it was, but it was so good. It was like a real acting tour de force for him. I felt like that was mostly about him. He did so much great acting in that, and what an interesting character role to play. Like imagine telling your friends, like, I'm playing Leonardo da Vinci on an alien planet in the Delta Quadrant on Star Trek. It's just so cool.
Yeah, at some point, I don't think I want to get us into it tonight because we're not super late yet, but I think this could be its own full topic.
Ooh.
We should talk about some of the best 2-part episodes.
Oh, that would actually be good to prepare so that we can
I wanted to do it right now.
have a list of those.
So many
I
things
know you
popping
do.
out.
That's why I had to preface it with I don't think we should get into it tonight.
No, I'm ready. Scorpion, part 1 and 2. It's my favorite. I love it.
Voyager has a lot of great 2-parters.
They
there's a lot of good
do.
ones,
And
man.
Scorpion it's got to be the best. It's got to be the best one.
Oh, I don't know.
What would you put up against Scorpion?
Year from Hell? Or Year of Hell?
Oh, that was
You're
good but
high
hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
I love that.
I would put that at maybe number 2. But you're right. That is really good. And Red from That 70s Show. Just the best. I just know him as that, guys. I don't know his actual name. I feel bad. I should know his name. He was really good, though. There was another guest star. And by the way, in a ton of Star Trek. He's been in a ton of stuff. In fact, back me up here, guys. Isn't Red also the president of the Federation in some...
Yes.
Is it the movies? Is it the TOS movies?
The movies.
Yes! Judy, you should know that one.
Oh, why
What
can't I
about-
remember that?
Yeah, so
about
good.
Descent?
So good.
Descent was really good.
But he's amazing just in general. I think he's played a bunch of little bit parts. And I know we talked about that one the other day. Oh, see, if you let me go, Azure, I would just make this a whole topic. I'm gonna be quiet.
Go ahead.
Someone do another one. If you guys don't go, I'm just gonna
I'm just
gonna
going
go.
silent to see what Merrick does.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's the thing is I don't know what to follow up on. Other than I do have one other bit part actor in Star Trek that I absolutely love, who is James Cromwell.
Oh, James Cromwell. God, can you call that a bit part when he like made it into?
Well, but
First
some of them
Contact?
are bit parts.
Yeah, I just love
yeah,
that
you're
he
right.
came-
Like, yeah, after First Contact, I guess it's more of like it's not quite a main role, but
Well, you're right. Yeah, for billing and for the movie, not a main role, and yet such an essential, integral, historical role in all of Star Trek the franchise, right? Like, my God,
Yes.
the guy reprised Zephram Cochrane, which is, the man who invented warp travel. And this, guys, in case those of you out there are not quite as adept, good night, Maple. As sort of like adept in the whole universe of Star Trek, it's crazy with Zephram Cochrane, right? Because Zephram Cochrane was described as being the inventor of warp travel and depicted in an entire episode of Jennifer. Oh my God, she's asleep. The original series, Zephram Cochrane has an entire episode in TOS.
No, of course, yes. It's the episode where he has that entity on the planet that
Yes.
he's kind of formed this bond relationship with.
Yes. And this is actually like a great point, speaking to Zephram Cochrane and sort of the way that he is, right? Because how we know him in First Contact, sort of like, I don't want to deal with my historical importance. This is all intimidating. I don't care. The same thing happened in TOS. So in the episode, if you guys haven't seen it, I know that Justin probably hasn't made it there yet. I want to say that's like season 3. And you haven't either. Okay, great. So he's a young man. But what ends up happening is that he invents warp travel and then ends up being like, he gets that first like warp 5 engine or whatever and then leaves. He's like, screw this. I don't want to deal with Earth. And he just goes off into the galaxy. And it's a mystery where he's been. It's been a mystery for forever. We assume he's dead. It's that kind of thing. We just didn't know. And then the Enterprise comes across his planet where he's there. And you sort of get to know him and that dynamic that Jennifer was talking about. So in First Contact, when an older Zephram Cochrane is sort of played by James Cromwell, who is amazing and plays a ton of awesome roles, right? How many is he in? He's at least as much as Mark Alimo, I think. He ends up playing that role as Zephram Cochrane, and it ends up being such an essential launching point for Enterprise, the TV show, that he comes back and reprises its exact role as older Zephram Cochrane, kicking off an entire television series as the same character. I just think that's amazing.
Well, which also carries on the tradition of up until and including Enterprise, one person from the previous series was always in the first episode of the following series.
Oh, yes.
That's,
yeah, the
Voyager
handoff.
had DS9.
Yes.
DS9 had Picard.
And it started
TNG
with
had Bones.
Bones, right? Exactly.
It did. All right, pop quiz. What was it that Bones said of the Enterprise to Data at the end of their walk down the corridor?
I mean, I
like a
watched
baby.
this like
That
less than a
one,
week ago, and I
man.
can't remember.
No?
Treat her like a.
Ah!
It is something like treat her like a.
Treat her like a.
Is it like a lady? No.
Like
Yeah. He says,
lady,
well,
right?
Yeah, I
And she'll
think
always
so.
get you home.
it is. He says, well, it's a new ship, but she's got the right name. Treat her like a lady, and she'll always bring you home. That's the actual line, which is so awesome, right? Like that whole scene is such an afterthought. Like it's literally never mentioned. They apparently do the entirety of Farpoint, and this Admiral Bones is on board. Like you hear nothing about this, but it is the perfect closure to the introduction of a brand new TV show, right? It's so awesome. Like it's the passing of the torch. It is the original series, like giving their blessing to the next show. And Azure is completely right. That trend continues all the way through Star Trek. It's as if to say, this is one thing. If you like one, you will like it all. It's all great. And up until the new generation of Star Trek, that's pretty much been true, right? Like if you like TNG, maybe you like it the best, but if you like TNG, you're gonna like DS9. If you like DS9, you might like it the best, but you're definitely gonna like Voyager, right? It's that kind of thing. It's if you like one, you're gonna like all of them.
Well,
But
they
I
were
just
very
love that.
cohesive. They
Yes.
were very cohesive the way they worked at that time. Yeah.
And can we just give some credit to the fact that a lot of characters came back for TOS from TOS to TNG, and that it just so happened to be that every episode they were in was like made of gold, like some of the best episodes that they were in. Like, isn't that a lucky thing? TNG has like the highs and the lows, man. Some episodes are terrible, and some episodes are life-changing. But let's like reunification for Spock, dude, and all the ones that had Sarek,
Which
in
is
it. What's
another
his name?
two-parter.
Another two-parter. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, you're right, dude. That's true. What's the name of the actor that plays Sarek? Who also played the Romulan commander in TOS?
I don't remember his name.
I felt like Juniper would know.
Uh,
Mark Leonard. Mark Leonard
Right,
was
yeah.
also
Mark
in
Leonard.
several episodes of TNG, super good ones too. And of course, Scotty in Relics is my favorite. I actually put Relics above Reunification, which is heresy. I know everyone loves Reunification. I do too.
I love
Relics
Relics is
so
very
good.
good. Yeah, Relics
It's
is
also
really
the
good.
inclusion of the freaking Dyson Sphere, like literally the coolest thing
Yeah.
that ends up being such a thing in STO. Done so well and told so beautifully by the writers at STO. One of the coolest, like, hey, you just introduced maybe one of the coolest and the most amazing mind-bending, like, mysteries of all of the cosmos in this episode, and then we never talked about it again. Like, that was Dyson Sphere, right? Wasn't Dyson Sphere one of the coolest things they ever showed on that show? And then they just kind of like left, and that was it.
Well, yeah, and
Watch
I do
it on
love
Star
when they
Trek Online.
tie it into STO. They're like, hey, yeah, it turns out we've been doing research on this since that episode, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Venwick says, I only remember him insulting Vulcans. I missed who he was referring to. Who was insulting Vulcans?
Bones.
Bones, I guess, probably. Oh, no, that's part of the line when he's walking with Data.
Yeah.
When Data, he says, how would you think I am, boy? And he
You're a
says,
Vulcan boy?
according to Starfleet records, you're 139 years old. He goes,
Pointy ears.
yeah, can you explain to me how you remember that so exactly?
Yeah.
He says, I'm an android or something like that. I don't see no pointed ears on you, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good, so good. Although my favorite introduction of Bones is walking off the transporter pad in Star Trek: The Motion Picture with the giant collar, the completely open, totally hairy chest, and the giant golden medallion.
Yeah.
Oh, that was awful.
Like I just was vomited out of a disco in the 70s upon the Starship Enterprise, and here I am.
Yeah,
This
that
is
was
such
a
good
really
look.
interesting aesthetic, and I guess it was the times, but that was always odd for me.
The aesthetic of him or of
Of
the
Bones, yeah, no,
Yeah.
but Bones of the movie, yeah.
which kind of applies to the entire movie, right?
Yeah. Although I feel like it was the most extreme in his attire.
He was right out of the 70s. It was a look. But Relics was so good, man. No bloody A,
really like
B,
Relics,
C,
yeah.
or D.
Mhm.
And when he's drinking Aldebaran whiskey with Picard on the holodeck. It's one of the
Who do you
greatest
think
scenes.
got it for Guinan?
Oh yeah. Who do you think got it for Guinan? Venwick says Riker exposed his chest hair too.
I'm okay.
I get
with that.
yes.
I love John.
In that one with the women in the world thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
the-
because
the women are in charge of everything, right?
Women in charge of everything.
Yeah, it's a
That's,
matriarchal
Angel One.
society.
Yeah.
Is that? Oh, you're right. It is
Yeah,
Angel
it is
One
Angel
because they're
One.
on the way to the
Yeah.
planet, and that's why.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Mistress Beata.
Beata.
no,
yeah,
they
that's
were
the
there.
one.
They were there to get someone off that planet that wasn't supposed to be there.
Oh
Was
yeah,
that
they
the-
were searching for Federation people who had, or no, non-Federation people who had crashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the same episode.
Where he shows his chest hair.
No, that is the episode where he shows his
Oh.
chest hair. But that's
Oh,
not
you're
the
talking about
episode
Angel
where
One is
Angel
the,
One.
Oh,
Is Angel One the one where it's the disease one?
That's what I was thinking. That in my head, in my head, that's what it
It
is.
is.
That's the disease one
I think.
where they're.
They've got that disease, and
Oh,
and that-
and Troy's supposed to get married.
Troy's getting
yeah,
married.
Troy's supposed to
yeah,
get
yeah.
married. Yeah, the arranged
Yeah.
marriage.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Also,
what's the
I
episode?
believe the first
Even if-
Loxana Troy episode.
Wait, no. I
Yeah.
just googled it. Angel One is the oligarchy of women.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. There you go.
All right, but is that the same episode as the alien disease, or is that a different?
That's a different one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just watched it. Well, I just had it on in the background while trying to do work. I don't remember what the name.
That's
of
how
it
I
is.
watch these.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Ben
because
Wick,
that's
that is
the one
episode,
where
right?
they're going through the wedding arrangements, and that's where you find out that Betazoids get married naked.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I love
To
Loxana Troy.
which Deanna's. Oh no, to which. What was the boy's name? What was the guy who's going to marry his name? His dad was excited about the naked thing, but not his mom. So like
Yeah,
his
because
dad's
he's like,
naked and
I
his
just
mom's
saw
not.
my dad practicing in the mirror.
Oh yeah, doing the like
Sucking
using
his
the belly
belly.
thing. Yeah. God, those early episodes are pretty unique. I like them a lot.
Oh yeah, there was a disease on the ship, not on the planet. It was the
Oh, that's
like
right.
Tyrellians or whatever. That might be the wrong alien race.
The
But it was like a
Trillions.
planet who had been wrecked by who's like got wiped out by disease, and there was one ship that had left, and it was they all carried this disease and wanted to like land on Angel One.
Yes,
Mm.
yes, but
So I
the
guess it is
one
the same episode.
no,
No,
because the other one there was a disease
wanted to land on
on the
whatever the
ship.
planet
There was there was an outbreak on the ship because they wanted to beam them back rather than being killed on the planet. But they said we can't allow that. There's too much disease here, which was
Yeah.
not the one from the alien ship.
I've gotten myself
Coming.
confused, so I'm gonna stop now.
Yeah,
It's-
I
getting
remember
these
I had the
episodes
names
mixed
mixed up.
But Angel One is definitely the oligarchy of women,
And of
Oh,
course,
okay.
the sexy Riker Chester.
right? Which is one of the highlights of the episode.
That's the more
That's
important part.
so-
and I
that's
love
so
them
great.
mocking him for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
And he's
talking
like,
so much crap.
he's like, why are you
What?
talking about this? I dressed in furs to
I
meet with
wore
so-and-so."
feathers on.
Yeah.
That's so good. Benwick says 800 plus episodes to remember is tough. That's fair.
True.
That's
Yeah.
tough. Yeah, it's a lot of episodes. This is why I try to go back and rewatch things. It's actually I'm being kind of bad right now because I'm rewatching TNG because Commander Justin got me hyped about it. I was like listening to I think it was I sat in and watched one with you and I was like, man, I haven't seen this in a while. I want to see it. But it is not the order that I should be doing it in if I'm trying to stay current on things. I haven't watched Enterprise in the longest, I think. That's the
I
one
would
that I
say
should
that was
rewatch.
true, yeah.
Yeah.
I've just
I
seen
haven't
rewatched
I haven't done
Enterprise, and I
DS9,
just-
Voyager. I haven't done any of that.
What?
I forget Enterprise episodes
I
a
haven't.
lot.
Yeah. I haven't done it this year. I mean,
Ah.
I haven't done it this year. If it wasn't for this stuff, then I probably would have eventually gone on to it for sure.
I've
'Cause I
already
do it every year
watched.
anyways. So
Yeah.
I've watched and or listened to, because a lot of the times, like I said, it's like background. Every series except TOS in the last like 3 months, and I'm now back to TNG because I want to see it again.
Yeah, Azure's better than me because I need to do Enterprise. Obviously, I need to do.
I just have huge amounts of time at work where I can just have stuff on, and
That's lovely.
have nothing else to do.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the real like gaps for me are probably Discovery. I have rewatched Prodigy multiple times already. Strange New Worlds multiple times. Disco I watched once, and I was not feeling like super great about Star Trek at the time, and I just wasn't making the effort to internalize all of what I was seeing like I normally do, you know?
Well, and also for a group, I'm going to go ahead and generalize this to all of us, and you guys can object if you disagree. But for a group like us, like Discovery, even for me, who rewatches all of them frequently and kind of constantly, Discovery is a harder one to rewatch because it uniquely, even compared to something like Picard, has very few moments of like optimistic hope.
Yeah.
Like you just literally move from one crisis to another constantly, and it gets kind of. The episodes are decent sci-fi. Like I think it's a good sci-fi series, but I actually kind of find it emotionally draining sometimes. Like it's
I can understand that. It's one action scene or like emotional crisis after another, and it is a little intense. There's more
I don't
lightheartedness.
necessarily think that's a bad thing, but the thing that drew me, and I know many of you, to Star Trek to begin with is its message of like, look, there's hope. Look at what the future can be.
Mm-hmm.
And then Discovery kind of flips it on its head quite often.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all right saying it didn't really feel like a Star Trek to me. Like that, that sense of feeling what we want to feel, we want to see. It didn't really feel that much. But I still enjoyed it as a sci-fi, as you were saying.
Oh, so. For sure. I mean, I think exploring the Klingon War
Yeah.
was super cool and interesting. I mean, some of the things that happened during it were creepy and weird, but like the idea is super cool. I think season 2 was actually phenomenal, partially because of Anson Mount.
Anson Mount.
Oh yeah,
love that man.
But I actually, despite thinking that Picard and Discovery at the same time kind of went all in on this AI is scary boat. I actually thought the plot line in season 2 was kind of pretty interesting and engaging. It's just, again, emotionally, it's hard to like watch on a constant basis because I binge Star Trek pretty hard, and so if you have like a week in between, maybe the roller coaster of emotions is easier to cope with. But when you're watching 4 episodes in a day, it can get draining.
So I'm just gonna say Burnham crying. I bet you all have it. Just pops up in your brain. You've seen it. You've seen it a lot. It's just happened a lot. It's a heavy TV show. And I think it's probably added to by the fact that we waited so long for a new Star Trek. It was the end of like a very long drought, and I saw pictures and saw the ships, and I built it up in my head about exactly what it's going to be, right? Like we've seen so many Star Treks that by that point there'd been a bunch. I think we all assumed that we knew what that was going to entail, and they really... you said they sort of flipped it on its head, and in a way, that's what like DS9 did, right? Like it took Star Trek and then like flipped it on its head, and then you kind of realize what that, what it's like when you really decide to go far afield, and basically just take, like at my lowest, I felt as though Discovery was a sci-fi show that had nothing to do with Star Trek, that was basically just skinned over as Star Trek to kind of get fans excited. Like that's at my worst, when I felt the worst about it, that's how it looked to me. It wasn't military, and it wasn't space, and they called them Klingons, I guess, but they didn't look like Klingons. Like there was something, all of the historical stuff and technology was all sort of wishy-washy about it, and more than that, I think you really spoke to it, Azure. I think it's like it doesn't have that same hopeful optimism. It was sort of like dark and heavy and serious from the beginning, and there's a lot of tears. And I wrote this down when we first started talking about the podcast and what we were gonna talk about. I wanted to think about what it is, because I really wanted to ask myself about like why. What is it that I have against Disco? And this next week's topic is when I really want to delve into this exactly, because I want to bring up the newspaper. The newspaper, like how old fans compare to new fans, the dichotomy between classic Trek and new Trek, right? Like that split that people make, and why that's such a polarizing issue, right? I think that would be an entire podcast. It'd be so awesome. And I've like tiptoed around it a bunch today because I don't want to start it. I'd like to start it next week. But effectively, there are some big cornerstone differences in the way that the shows are framed at all. And and one of those ways is, like how, and I'll go into this more next week, but like, yeah, I can watch an episode and go, and that was thought-provoking, or that was interesting character development, I guess, or that was a big dramatic thing, the really cool special effects, that whatever. There's a great many things that I could say about the show that were phenomenal, right? But at the end of almost every single episode of Next Generation, at the end of almost every single episode of Deep Space Nine, at the end of almost every single episode of Voyager, and even Enterprise to a lesser degree, at the end of every episode, I'll sit there, sigh in that happy Star Trek way, like, man, that just felt good. And you find yourself thinking, like, I wish I was a part of this crew. Like, they're like a family, and I wish they were my family. Like, I wish I was on board this ship. I want to be one of these guys on the ship, or just one of the actors who were in it at that time. Whatever it is, I don't know what it is, but you're like, man, this is more than just some thing. This is a family that I want to be a part of this. Mm-hmm. And you know how many times I felt like that watching Discovery?
Like all the time.
Never was. Even the episodes where I'm like, that was good. Even the couple episodes I could pick out, like Mud's episode, all right? It was a great episode. Literally, I loved it. But I never once had that feeling of like, oh man, I wish I was a part of this. I want these guys to be my friends. I want to be a part of the USS Discovery, like no one ever was.
Oh no!
But so I think we should probably wrap up somewhat soon.
Yes,
and I am intentionally trying to keep us from getting too.
You're gonna wrap it up right now. Yeah.
I do think homework for all four of us for next week. Think about that. What is it that makes you, like, draws you into like want to be part of a crew in various series, and what is it that sometimes makes you not feel that way? And obviously that will be probably more than a 2-hour discussion, but we'll cut
absolutely.
It down
absolutely.
This will carry the whole night, I promise.
Tune in next time for
what's your favorite two-parter?
we're coming back to that for sure. I actually need to write that down.
We will come back to that.
This is a two-parter now.
Yes, because I have a whole speech. I could give a whole thing about the significance of the first two-parter with Best of Both Worlds.
Yeah. Hold on. Meta reference here. We have to make the best two-parters, or talking about two-parters, a two-part episode.
A two-part episode.
Okay.
Oh, that's so good.
That's fair. Yes.
All right, guys. Obviously, we came across so many awesome topics tonight. Sometimes we get a little tentative about it because how much we want to unpack those things. Last week's episode is a perfect example of that. I think we started to think, we would just kick off the episode with our discussion about villains, our discussion about Louise Fletcher and the significance of Star Trek villains. It not only filled the entire 2 hours, but actually left out several episodes and several series and a bunch of villains that we felt like we ran out of time for. So next week we got some special stuff for you. I'm excited about that because I want to bring out that article. I'm going to have that up here. We can review it and talk about sort of the difference in Star Trek generations, the generations of viewers, as well as the generations of series themselves. I think this is going to be one of my favorite talks. I'm very excited about that. As always, we didn't talk as much about Star Trek Online this week, but we are always hanging out here on Floor 47 Mezzanine in Earth Space Dock and Star Trek Online. This game is amazing. We are in no way sponsored by this, but it is my hope to interact with them at some point, sometime, because we are all diehard fans of this game. Please, if you have not already looked into this game and you're a Star Trek fan, you are missing out. This is a love letter to all fans of Star Trek. It is the best place to experience this world that we all know and love. So please come check it out. It's free to play. Reach out to us. Definitely go down and join us in the Discord, guys. Everything that we do all about our community. We hang out, talk every day, share memes and stories and arts and crafts about Star Trek. We play STO together. And we also coordinate what we stream when we stream it for STO streams and podcasts, all in the Discord. So it's discord.gg/Star Trek Night Shift. All one word. So hopefully you guys come check us out for that. Please like, comment, subscribe on the video. We're just getting started, guys. This is our 4th podcast, so we're nice and small, but it's our hope that people find us, get into this, just have us on in the background while you're playing Star Trek Online. We love to interact about everything Star Trek, so if you know anyone who's into Star Trek, please tell them about the Discord, tell them about the stream, tell them about the YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers so that we can get our vanity URL and be youtube.com/Star Trek Night Shift. That'd be awesome. As always, thank you guys for coming. We do this every single Saturday at about 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully we will catch you guys next week for the same thing. I am going to be on vacation this next week with Chief Jennifer. So sadly, we're going to be missing the next STO stream for on Thursday, which is what we normally do. But the watch party will still be done in the Discord. Commander Justin, were you planning on doing a stream for STO or?
I might
put you on the spot.
Okay.
Maybe look out for Justin. That's twitch.tv.
But answer us right now.
I'm so sorry. I meant to ask ahead of time. TV /
We got to give Justin's Twitch.
Oh, guys. There we go. I linked his Twitch in the
There we
thing. He's
go,
also going to be linking it in
There
the
you go.
Discord as well. So please go check him out. But we will be back for next Saturday's podcast. We're not going to miss that. So hopefully we will see you guys next week. Any other announcements? Everyone feeling good?
Yeah.
All right. You're beautiful. Thank you, Chief Jennifer, Commander Justin, Science Officer Azure, and Merrick TV signing off. Live long and prosper, guys. We love you all. Walk with the prophets. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.